Welcome to the Conscious Publicist Podcast, a space where thoughts become ideas to advocate for a more conscious human experience in the media. Our thoughts and ideas inspire action, and the most notable leaders and organizations have transformed thoughts and ideas into global initiatives that have impacted the lives of millions. My name is Ashley Graham, and as a woman-owned business founder and publicist, I guide leaders, visionaries, and creators in discovering their conscious media voice and methodologies that inspire connection, community, and impact through aligned media channels. In this podcast, we'll dive into public relations, thought leadership, business, and entrepreneurship, all through the lens of being a conscious human being. I'll take you behind the scenes into the habits, thoughts, and modalities that have helped leaders shift past paradigms of limiting beliefs, comparison, and self-doubt to show up for themselves to become the subject matter experts they were called to be. Subscribe to the show on Apple or Spotify and join us on this journey of awakening the conscious, enlightened leader within you. I am still in ideation for the topics that are going to be covered for our voice activation series, which is the series following the self-mastery series. And although it's still under ideation, there is a topic that I wanted to talk about as I feel that it is also in alignment with the modalities that I shared in the previous episode. Essentially, what voice activation is for me, or how I interpret or perceive voice activation, is it's this inner and outer journey of using the voice in a way to inspire, guide, educate, and creative movement essentially around our story, our ideas, our perspectives, our expertise. This is where the thought leadership connection comes in. But voice activation is the activation of using the voice. And my goals for the voice activation series is to give some really good insights and perspectives into how I've moved through the ebbs and flows of using the voice in a public perspective, in a public sphere. But I want to be able to walk you through some tangible takeaways as well as modalities that you can incorporate in your daily life to activate your voice, to tell the stories and the messages and the experiences that matter. As I believe in expressing the tonality and the context of what I want to bring full circle with the podcast is these three pillars of self-mastery, voice activation, and the conscious voice. I don't want to get too far off track here with this, but as I was ideating the copy and the positioning for the Conscious Publicist before the podcast was even manifested, is when it comes to thought leadership, or in my perspective, the journey of what it takes a human being to go from one identity of their lives to step into these other roles and these other identities to embark on this thought leadership path, is there are anchor points of the journey from a human being that goes through the thought leadership process to bring to life and activate their past, present, future, and how that essentially connects with their ideal client, their ideal audience, or who it is that they're looking to serve through their thought leadership. I actually gave a student workshop on this recently, all around thought leadership and the different types of media and content and this external experience of what thought leadership is, both in the traditional sense and the more modernized version of thought leadership, but as expressed in the business name as an entity, there is this living, breathing energy of consciousness. And I always want to bridge the connection between the masculine and the feminine dualities of thought leadership. We all have feminine and masculine energy as who we are as people. And I see the media space, especially verticals like a podcast or like content channels, is we follow very masculine practices or masculine actions in order to publicly bring these things to life. But at the end of the day, there is this feminine journey of tapping into our emotions, our observations, our experiences to craft that in a way that builds an emotional connection with those that we're looking to serve. So, thought leadership, I feel, is just this activation or this manifestation of all these other characteristics, all these other things that live below the surface. And so, bringing it back to the pillars of the podcast is self-mastery is again that journey of what that person goes through to take their experiences, their lessons, their challenges, their failures, their wins, their accomplishments, and ultimately take this bank of experiences that they've had in their lives and mold it and craft it in a conscious way in order to create a movement and create an identity around how they're looking to serve and impact those that they're wanting to serve and impact. But secondary to that, voice activation is the actual public activation part of that. There's a voice behind that story. There's a voice behind that message. And again, speaking to the polarities of masculine and feminine, or the balance, I should say, that's probably a better word. The balance of masculine and feminine. Well, the voice has both energies. The voice is a masculine sense that it's very strong and it's very empowering and it knows exactly what it wants to be known for. But there's also this feminine energy, this feminine being of the voice, in the sense that it takes a very vulnerable connection to our experiences to be able to put them out into the world. There's also these other characteristics of being a human and the way that our minds work that we struggle with either self-criticism or fear of being judged or whatever the circumstances may be. And voice activation is this experience to where you continue to fight this inner critic. You continue to fight old versions of yourself that might have lived in more fear, lived in more moments of not wanting to be criticized or judged or whatever the circumstances may be. And when you lead through voice activation is you acknowledge those parts of yourself, you acknowledge those parts of your brain, you acknowledge those parts of your journey, but you do not allow them to hold you back. And then when it comes to the conscious voice is this manifestation of the process of self-mastery and voice activation. The conscious voice is how you start to be identified by other people. It's those that you are serving and those that you are guiding that are able to see, sense, feel, touch, smell, all of these senses. They're able to know exactly who you are, what you do, and how you serve and impact them. So there's this beautiful connection between those three pillars that I'm always wanting to bring to the roots of this platform. I am really excited to get into the voice activation series, as there is a lot of content that is being structured and crafted and molded around this concept. And I would say, I'm not going to set myself on an unrealistic deadline here, but I can envision that series launching in the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, the topic that I wanted to talk about today is more so mental and physical modalities or just practices that keep me connected to using my voice for the podcast and also bringing my voice to other people's podcasts. And so there are a couple of practices that I do each time I'm ready to record an episode for the show, or if I am, like I said, being interviewed on someone else's platform, to activate my voice and to bring clarity around what it is that I'm wanting to say in that moment. The one thing that I think is not talked about enough is how intentional platforms like this are and how they should be it is a looking glass and an open door to allow people to come and learn about you and connect with you and take away parts of the conversation that they can apply in their own lives. That's the transformation of this work. I truly believe that at my core. And so to bring that level of intentionality, there comes this environment, and more so internal environment, that needs to be perfected, or maybe not even perfected, but nurtured in order to bring the best light, to bring the best energy to the conversation, to the relationship. I've talked about this before, but one of my themes for 2024 is to create when I feel solely called to create and when I feel connected to what it is that I'm creating. And that is such a sacred space. That's such a sacred energy that lives and breathes intentionality. And I'm excited just to kind of share with you a little bit of the headspace that I get myself in before I get on the podcast, or before I get on someone else's show, or even getting on connection calls. I believe that the time that you receive from other people, especially even people listening to episodes or the content that you're sharing, time is one of our most valuable assets. And so I really value the time that anybody gives me, whether creating a space for me to shine in my brilliance, or just the time that people take to connect with me, or whatever the circumstances may be. So with all that said, here are the practices that I make it a point to move through before getting on a platform and living through my own voice activation. So first and foremost, I make it a point to energize my mind. Now, in conjunction with what I mentioned about meditating, is I will usually take a few minutes to either meditate or immerse myself in an affirmation mantra practice, which I more so kind of listen to those internally and allow my kind of aura, my essence, just to soak in what is being said. Because I believe that although the voice is a muscle and it is a physical thing, there is this internal voice that I feel is where I'm able to physically bring it into manifestation. So the one thing that I love about meditating or listening to affirmation mantra meditations is it allows myself to stimulate my mind, to stimulate natural thought. And it's more so stimulation around positive thoughts. So leading in with the intentionality, I am very intentional and very particular about the type of mantras that I listen to. So, for example, if I was to listen to an affirmation mantra right before either getting on a podcast recording for the show or getting again on someone else's platform, I would listen to affirmations that connect to consciousness or self-reflection. And there's actually an incredible meditation that I listen to on Insight Timer. I feel like I'm always plugging that app. But there's an affirmation meditation around conscious evolution. And I'll drop it in the show notes if you're intrigued or curious to know the words that are said in this meditation. But it is words that trigger these feelings of self-love and feeling like I am abundant and loving and just fully cracked open as a person. And so when I'm going to use my voice to talk about things that I think are valuable and positive and would impact someone, I need to have that belief within myself first and foremost before I'm even able to project it outwards. And that's what I love about affirmation meditations is it activates that self-belief before influencing and sharing it outwards. So I usually start with that. But also what I believe energizes the mind is how we nurture our bodies. That's more of like a physical practice, which I'll maybe reshare this again when I dive into the next part. But Some other practices that I feel that do stimulate the mind is drinking a glass of water or indulging in a caffeinated beverage and a healthy snack. Obviously, again, we categorize water, hydration, nourishment as more of this physical connection to get our bodies in the right place, but our bodies and our minds are one and the same, and they feed and fuel one another. Now, I'm not always the best person at hydrating. I make it a point to get better every single day, but I usually will start my mornings with drinking water just to get my day started, which I do feel has lasting benefits throughout the day, regardless of when I'm planning to be in conversation with another person. But it just allows me to have an extra boost when I need it. I also feel that there's this practice or this moment of stillness as well when you are enjoying a treat or taking a drink, whether it is a caffeinated drink or a glass of water. But it takes this moment in time away to where you just enjoy that one thing. Now, so when I do drink my water or enjoy a snack, I try to clear my mind and clear my thoughts to sit in a moment of quiet reflection while doing these certain things, which I also feel aid to the full picture of energizing the mind. In general, just to get the day started, but definitely for being in conversation with other people, regardless of what the vertical is. A big message here is the more mental clarity that you have, the better that you can articulate and bring engaging conversations to the forefront. And so, leading into the next point, I wanted to talk about activating the voice and the body. Now, the voice, the body, the mind, again, they're all connected, but there's certain modalities or practices that are more so connected to the voice and the body as their own selves. So, taking a morning walk is one of my personal techniques to activate both my mind and my body, but then also the voice, because there's this enjoyment of not only getting fresh air, but having the exercise is a way to bring natural energy to the physical self, but then also to the mental self. I also think that it's an excellent opportunity to gather my thoughts and, to the best of my ability, mentally organize them, especially around the topics that I will be discussing. There is a lot of stimulation that comes from taking walks for me. And in the past, I've actually listened to mantra meditations or meditations while on walks. Now I get to enjoy them with my partner and just bounce ideas. But there's this amazing experience of getting physical stimulation and mental stimulation at the same time, which leads into the second point for activating the voice and the body, regardless of if I'm with myself or with my partner. I do incorporate some type of vocal exercise. Now, with my partner, it's more so in conversation, bouncing around thoughts that are in my mind and using my voice to get in flow of expression. Being in the car is also another lovely experience for me when it comes around activating the voice because I love singing and I love chanting mantras in a safe space that I am the only one that hears them. But it is a way for me to activate my voice, which has a lot of stimulation in other ways as well. Reflecting on just different modalities and practices that activate the voice, especially talking about chanting mantras and singing, I can dedicate a whole episode to that. But as I am planning on launching the voice activation series sooner rather than later, I'm going to save some of those gems for that content. So leading into the last point here for different practices and getting myself in the right headspace and physical space to be able to use the voice both energetically, but also physically and mentally. They're all connected, also spiritually as well. is probably the most important one. And that's hard to say because I feel that they all have their own importance and have their own impact. But there's a lot of value that comes from reflecting on your why, or in this case, reflecting on my why. There's some parallels in how this connects to using journaling as a modality as well. But the more attention and the more space that we can give ourselves to understand our own fluctuation of thoughts and perspectives and our emotions and how vastly different our experiences can be on any given day, when we allow ourselves to journal and reflect on the reason why we get up with a sense of purpose every day, it helps keep you connected to that inner voice. And when you're connected to that inner voice, you're able to show up from a place of authenticity and a place of trust and pure alignment that the energy and the time and the connection that you're looking to create is what you will be creating for yourself. But most importantly, for those who are looking to be guided and those looking to be served through how you're leading with your brilliance. Sometimes I will dedicate a whole journal page to reflecting on my why. And this isn't just a general overview of why I am sharing a certain message or sharing this overall context of the mission and the purpose that I'm looking to fulfill, but it's more so creating this way to ground around a particular topic and approach from an intentionality perspective and a sense of purpose. I know there are a number of different parallels to what somebody is looking to create when it comes to their storytelling, their voice, and their message. But if we can allow ourselves to hone in on a particular why, or maybe even just a particular ask or what you're looking to receive in certain conversations, or in this case, certain interviews, and bridge a connection to your big why, what that big why is for, I believe it's able to shift the energy and clarity around how you're going to serve through what you say. Again, we'll dive into all of this in the voice activation series, but there's this common experience that you can be so focused and so clear on what your message is. And you can rehearse the message for hours and hours and hours on end, thinking that you have completely mastered what it is that you're looking to say. And in some cases, you can knock it right out of the park. But there are these moments every now and then where maybe you woke up on the wrong side of the bed one day and you had at least 70% of your cup to give. And with that 70%, you shined, but there might have been these little things that were said that might not have come across exactly how you had intended them to be, or maybe you just didn't feel so connected to your voice, your energy when you go back and listen to that recording or listen to that interview, and you start to hear that voice of that inner critic, that self-doubt, the little pings that create this thought that, man, that could have been better. If we allow ourselves just to have this little space to reflect on what that message is and what the purpose is as to why you keep showing up, it does not matter whether it was 70% or 100%. You know that at the end of the day, you've tried your best. And I do believe that when people show up and they are looking to serve from whatever capacity that they can give in that moment, that is felt from those who are tuning in, those who are dedicating their time and their energy to connect with you in those moments. That's felt. I do believe, and this is another out there perspective, but I believe even in this technologically driven and digital world that we live in, energy is still energy. So if you take the medium, you take the digital out of it, at the end of the day, it's still a human connection on one end and another human connection on the end. And if you keep that image at the forefront of your mind that that is your why, you are going to serve and impact at least one other person through that conversation. And at the end of the day, that's all we really could ask for. I hope you found these helpful, and I'm excited to bring even more in-depth experiences and perspectives around voice activation and how you can use certain modalities in different types of practices of voice activation or different environments, quote unquote, to use voice activation. And my last little note here before I wrap the episode up is I do want to mention that I have these incredible advisory calls, or what I like to call clarity calls, where we can address a particular problem or area that you're looking to get expert guidance on. Now, as this was around modalities to activate the voice, there's different layers of using the voice, whether it's a confidence blockage or clarity around a particular message, or even just clarity around a particular story that you're wanting to share in a public vertical. So if you're ever needing insights or guidance, my advisory calls and clarity calls are always available. I'll drop a link to book those in the show notes if you are interested. But just so you know, I am always here to support you. And if there's any other ways that I can support you, either through the podcast or through some of the other verticals that we focus on and activate with the Conscious Publicist, please reach out to me at any time.